Hala said I started a little bit. I talked a little bit about expansion tanks last week. I mainly talked about my pet peeve for last month. I can't stand the way some people just have these things hanging, literally sitting in baskets and stuff like that. There's plenty of stuff out there. So anyway, I talked about that last week. I wanted to go through a couple of things this week real quickly here. I popped up some names. These are the names you'll usually see on the tanks. I think Amtrol is probably the biggest one that I see, but there's several people that make, or several companies that make the tanks. And a lot of times when you start researching, you find it's one company making a whole bunch of tanks for a whole lot of people. So you never really know exactly, where it originated from. But anyway, real quickly, the tanks usually come pre-charged, 20 to 50 psi. It just depends on the manufacturer. They're kind of all over the place, but 50 seems to be where it tops out. You want to check the hose bib. You want to check the pressure at a hose bib so you know what the house pressure is. So you don't want to check it, anywhere that it could be on a pressure reducing valve, anything like that, unless of course that's feeding the whole house on a pressure reducing valve. But anyway, check, see what the house pressure is, and what you want to do is you want to match the tank pressure to the house pressure. So if the house pressure is 60 psi and you check your tank and your tank is 40, then you're going to pump the tank up a little bit to match that house pressure. Like a lot of things, maximum operating pressure, we want to try to keep it at 80 or less. That seems to be the number that pops up more often because of could cause damage to the system, blow ball cocks apart, all kinds of stuff like that. So we don't want it to get over 80 on the house anyway. So that means you don't really want to operate the tank over 80. The tank is capable of handling like 150. I mean, that's the rating on the tank. So I mean, don't worry if you get up to 80 that you're going to blow the tank up. That should not be a problem. Now, the question I get probably more than anything, how can I check these out? Well, you can kind of check them out, but you can never be 100% sure unless you're one of the guys that shut things down and really test. And most of us don't do that. We, to stay within the standards of practice, we do kind of some basic stuff. So the first thing I would say to do is when you approach, the water heater is check the TPR valve. Is it dripping? I usually stick my finger in the pipe, and if it's wet, then there's probably an issue there. But anyway, that's the whole purpose of this tank. It keeps the water heater from releasing pressure when the system is operating. Most of the time, the dripping does seem to start when the pressure starts rising up. So apparently, when the tank's heating up, you're more likely to see a drip. So anyway, if you don't see that, I mean, I wouldn't be overly concerned to start out with, as there's no water. Some people thump the tank. You thump it with your finger. Just be really careful. I mean, I've seen some of these tanks at the joints that they were just barely hanging on. And you're talking to a guy that's 50 years in the plumbing business, and I've thumped things before, and it fell right off. And unless you really know how to scramble, you don't know what to do. So you can bump them, and obviously you get more of a thud than an echo. Probably waterlogged. The tank's got too much water in it, and in most cases completely waterlogged, and it's not going to work. The whole purpose of the tank is to give you some air cushion for the heated water to expand and press against. If you want to know if the tank is it's got air in it, you won't be really getting the pressure reading, but if you want to see if there is air in there, you can put your finger on the needle valve. I mean, as an HVAC guy and a plumbing contractor, I've done that many times. I've just took my finger up there and pushed it, or took a little, pin or something like that, a little screwdriver, and just hit the little needle valve real quickly, and you'll hear the air. If there's air in it, you'll hear it. You just won't know what the pressure is, if you do that. The way to find out what the pressure is you have to shut the system down and drain the water pressure down, and then put a tire gauge on the tank itself. And if you're doing that, you're way overdoing it. We just typically we're not going to do anything like that. Also, because I know we'll run out of time real quickly, there's one thing I did discover recently. I hadn't really paid much attention and noticed it. Uh, there's a tank that has a device on theirs called an Insight Service Indicator Cap. It's in one of the Amtrol devices. Has this cap that screws on the Schrader. And if it's clear, kind of a white looking cap at the very tip, it's, everything's good. But if it gets discolored, somehow or another, they've done something with the plastic so they can tell us some air, maybe some moisture or something like that's leaking out of it. If it's discolored, you should report it. So I've only seen these on a couple or noted that they were on a couple. I have not come across them myself, but this popped up when some of my research. So look at the little cap that goes over the Schrader, and if you've got one of the clear caps, white tip, you might be looking at that particular one. But otherwise, you're just going to have to rely on the thumping the tank if you want to do that. But again, if it's not dripping, the TPR valve is not dripping, it's probably not an issue. You probably are not need to be overly concerned with it. But some folks go a little beyond the scope and they test a little bit, but just be real careful with that. Anyway, any Alex, did you get any questions in there you want me to answer, or?
Well, somebody asked about using a tire pressure gauge on it, and right before you answered that question, so you already answered that.
Yeah, because it doesn't really tell you anything if you put it on there with water pressure.
Yeah.
Some people will just put it on there, and I mean, you'll get a reading off of it, but you can't really tell what's in the tank.
Right.
Because you could be getting the pressure from the water. And what they showed the tradesman to do is shut it off, kill the pressure, then check the tank itself, is what they're doing. So if you're just sticking the gauge up there, you're probably not doing too much. But anyways,
so when I test those things, I mean, I tap both top and bottom, and I should get a different sound, right? You should get a thump.
Yeah, it's more of a thud.
It should ring where the air is, and then if I
it usually feels hollow.
If they're both the same, that's when I open the valve, and almost every time water sprays out, my client can go, oh yeah,
absolutely, yeah. If you see water, you're shot.
Yeah.
Absolutely, and
so somebody suggested the thermal using an IR.
Yeah, they just need they need to get somebody out there to take a look at it. But the first thing I would always check is the TPR valve and see, some of them here in Virginia Beach, we just run the blow-off tube down to the floor in many cases, a couple inches off the floor. And I always would stick my finger inside of that to see if it was wet, and that way I would know something was going on. But anyway, that's basically it. You can't do a whole lot, and you really don't want to do a whole lot. You'll end up, I certainly wouldn't recommend somebody shut a water heater down and kill the pressure on it in order to check one of these things.
Yeah.
Because if it's an older water heater with an older valve, if you shut it off, it probably won't come back on. A lot of these old gate valves, I've nicknamed them one-time valves. You turn them off one time and that's it. You got to replace it.
Yeah. So somebody's asking about making a comment that you could use an IR camera on it. To get to where you'd see the barrier between you get two different.
Yeah, you might be able to. I know sometimes you can feel the bottom of the tank, and it'll be warmer, and at the top it'll be kind of cold, up in, or at least cool down at the top. So you can tell water's pushing up in there. It's working on the cushion. It's going up and down. It's working on the cushion, and so you can, it's just like a. The heat's rising up into the tank because it's able to move up against the cushion, and then it drops back down. It's similar to what you can do on some boilers, though. I mean, I'm sure those of you that live in boiler country and stuff like that, there's a lot of guys still have the old tanks, and up between the floor joists of a second floor or strap somewhere, they've got a regular tank. They don't even have pre-charged tanks. But sometimes you can feel the bottom of the tank, and you can say, well, that's definitely a lot warmer than it is up at the top. But I would really caution you to be really careful with those things. They are, and you can tell I'm a little gun shy because I've actually, tested things, put my fingers on things, as a plumber, and all of a sudden it was, I was holding it in my hand, and so I get a little nervous about that as a home inspector. I certainly wouldn't want to be standing there with nothing you know, nothing able to make a quick repair with. And if you find yourself repairing something, you have over inspected.
Yeah, so Kenny, we got a question, just a basic question about why. I mean, why are we testing these things?
You know, again, I don't test them, to be perfectly honest with you, other than stick my finger in the TPR pipe. But every now and then I'll get asked that question. Some people do. Hey, I've been all over the country. I've talked to different guys. I see guys that'll walk into a house and set 3 tool bags on the floor. With the exception of with my ladders, everything I needed to inspect, I had in my pocket. I mean, pretty much everything I needed could be in my pockets. You never saw me bring a toolbox in the house. If I have a toolbox in the house, I was a plumber and an HVAC guy. But but I see guys come in with all kinds of testers and they go way beyond and stuff. I didn't do it. I was inspecting about 20 years and I just didn't do it. And it never came back to bite me in all that time. But if that's something you're doing, because I know, like I said, some guys really go way beyond the scope of the home inspection. It's just a matter of how you feel about it.